Welcome, everyone. How are you enjoying Fluttercon? This is pretty great. This is the first U.S. Fluttercon, is my understanding. This is the first one I've been to. Has anyone been to a Fluttercon, like in Europe, or a couple of folks? Great. All right. How's this one comparing? Yeah. All right. So people like the food? I haven't heard anyone talk about the speakers yet, so we'll see. Yeah. Okay. Well, so welcome, everyone. My name is Chris, and I'm an independent consultant. I specialize in applied AI, developer tools, and ecosystems, and I'll talk a little bit more about what that means in a second. But because you're in this talk, from now until the end of the internet, feel free to send me an email on any topic you choose to that email address, and I will always answer. I may just say, I don't know, right? But I'm happy to always answer. Also, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter, GitHub, LinkedIn. This is where I hang out, right? So I'm here. So why should you believe the giant man at the front of the room? Well, I have been doing this stuff for an embarrassingly long time. I have worked on a large number of technologies. Probably the one you care most about, because you're in this room, is Flutter. I've been a Flutter dev for 6 years. Who can beat me? Oh, hey, that's pretty, all right. How long, sir? 2018. 2018. Yeah, 6. That's 6. I'll write you an app when we're done. You'll be fine. Okay, cool. Great. The other thing about me and Flutter is that I was the PM, the lead PM for Flutter, responsible for the developer experience from version 1 to version 3. So I got to be on the Flutter team, and that's pretty great. I've worked on a number of products. Besides Flutter, the one you probably care most about is a recent one called SourceGraph Cody. How many people have heard of Cody? A couple of folks. So Cody is a developer tool using generative AI to do, code gen. It's a GitHub Copilot competitor. So think of it that way. But since we're here talking about generative AI, you might care about that. I worked on a number of open source projects. I don't know if anyone's heard of GoRouter. I was the original author on GoRouter, although the Flutter team has taken it over, done fantastic work with it. And I'm also here today announcing the Flutter AI Toolkit, which you will see in action. And if you care, I have a blog, have since 1995. Feel free to check that out if you like. I have a little bit of a PSA if you're into the AI talk genre. A couple of talks have switched kind of last minute. Scott's talk used to be set for tomorrow afternoon. Now it's this evening, and likewise Leo. So those two have swapped. But they're both generative UI. They both are generative AI, if you care. Great. So what is generative AI? Well, it has been almost 2 years, not quite 2 years. November of 2022 is when OpenAI released ChatGPT. Can you believe it's only been that long? Because they have just blown the doors off from a technology point of view, right? And this isn't actually my slide. I stole it from some other talk. I think it's fun. Look at all the gunk on there. Look at how far we've come in not even 2 years in terms of all these things that we have to know in generative AI in that space. Well, let me distill a little bit for you. Generative AI, we've been doing AI for decades as an industry. In fact, we've been doing it for so long now that we've actually had 2 AI winters that we've suffered through and then come back out of. But the interesting thing about generative AI is that previous AIs were all about analyzing existing data and either using that to train or predict results. Generative AI is the first AI we get that actually gives us new content. And that gives us all kinds of opportunities, and we'll see some of those today. Now, LLMs, I'm sure you're familiar with that, large language models. The thing that makes that interesting, that's the core, the backbone that makes generative AI possible. And it can generate anything language-like, right? It doesn't have to be, your term paper. It could be code. It can be JSON. It can be data, right? That makes it pretty interesting and pretty flexible for devs. Prompts you've heard about. Prompts are, the thing that the user enters. But you've also heard this term prompt engineering. And prompt engineering is interesting because a lot of times we want to take what the user enters and augment it with additional data before we send it back to the LLM with our apps. We'll talk about that and how you get the LLM to do what you want. The term prompt engineering. In fact, if you've ever had more than 2 messages in the same thread with an LLM, if you're like, no, that's wrong, do it this way, that's prompt engineering. Put that on your resume. All right. Multimodal is this idea of being able to take as input into an LLM more than just text, images, PDFs, video, audio, right? All kinds of stuff. That's what multimodal is about. And then RAG. How many people have heard of RAG? How many people have ever used it? Yeah, it's the scary one on this list. It's the one that people look into and go, that's weird. What does that mean? It expands to retrieval augmented generation, but now we're talking about vector databases and embeddings and all kinds of black mystery math. It's not a big deal. We'll show it today. Okay? You don't need the cloud. You don't need to store things in vector databases. You don't need any of that. Those are all useful, and you should. But it's just, you'll see. Okay. Now, we're all Dart and Flutter programmers. We are all Dart and Flutter programmers, right? Everyone has written here Dart and Flutter in anger. All right. So, today I'm here to announce the Flutter AI Toolkit. And it is essentially, it's a chat widget, right? But instead of chatting with, some backend server and, storing things and allowing people to talk to each other, it's about people talking to an LLM and keeping that history and that context for future parts of the conversation. And it is multimodal, right? You can upload pictures and audio and PDFs and files of all kinds. And because it's Flutter, it's supported on mobile and web and desktop. And that's a big part of the AI toolkit, but it's not the only part. Another big part is this idea of LLM providers, where you can have a standard interface that you wrap around whatever LLM you want. And out of the box, we support the Google Gemini and we support Firebase Vertex LLMs. But you can wrap it around anything and then hand it to this chat, and this chat can now use whatever LLM backend you want, whether it's remote in the cloud, local on your machine. Okay? So that's pretty cool. Plus, I'll show you, you can use the providers without even touching the chat. Okay? I'll show you how that works too. Great. Currently it's in alpha. I just had my first release a couple weeks ago. First public release. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I am going to be showing off some features on the road to beta today. I haven't released them yet. In fact, I've already had one person complain that I'm doing cool stuff that I'm not sharing with the world, but I will soon. My plan for my flight home tomorrow evening is to put this all up on Pub so everyone has access to it. Okay? Great. And it's all on GitHub, right? So feel free, raise some issues, find some bugs, feature requests. All right. So at this point, I'm going to spend most of the rest of this talk doing a live demo. Now, there's a couple of things that are going up in the air here. What's that? Yeah, yeah, exactly. I actually, most of the images in this talk I generated with generative AI, just in case you're wondering. But we've got a couple of things going on here. One, I'll be writing code in front of you. It's always nerve-wracking. Two, it's a conference and I'll be using the internet, so fingers crossed there. And three, of course, I'll be speaking with an LLM, and I have an idea of what it's supposed to say. We'll see how close I get, okay? So, with that, let's bring up, I'm writing Visual Studio Code, and I've got an app. This app has no AI in it. Okay? It's just a regular old recipe app. I can scroll through the list of recipes. I can see what the instructions are and the ingredients are. You know, it does do a little bit of cool responsiveness that I like to show off because it's fun. And I can edit the recipes and etc. But it is just a plain old recipe app. Okay. Having trouble with this microphone. All right. So, oh, and I can search too. Great. Nothing surprising here. The reason I start with this is because I don't imagine most of you are going to go and build a chat app, right? We've got plenty of those, right? We've got ones that talk to all the LLMs. They work great. What I expect you to do is take your existing apps and add LLM functionality to them, right? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to add chat to this app and then see where that takes us. All right. So I've got my search box and my recipe list. I'm going to add the LLM chat view right here. And the only thing it needs to do its job is something called a provider. What's a provider? Well, a provider is an instance of this abstract LLM provider, and I've got multiple implementations in this talk in the toolkit to bring in. So I'm going to go with the Gemini provider, and of course this is Cody giving me a bunch of helpful code. Thank you. This is actually more than I need, but subtractive coding is always better than additional coding. So that's my provider. So this is Gemini. Like I say, out of the box, two main providers supported: Gemini, Firebase, Vertex. Turns out the APIs are nearly identical. Anyone know the difference? The API key, exactly right. Now, the Gemini model is great from prototyping, get something working fast, right? I don't have to set up a Firebase project. I don't have to do all that configuration. But in production, you don't want to use this because you'll be bundling your API key into your client. Somebody can reverse engineer it, go to town on your end, on your dime, right? Great for what I'm doing here, not for production. For production use, you want to use Firebase Vertex, okay? And they've got authentication, and they've got app check, and they've got all those great features that you need to build a real app. Two good news is for you. One, APIs are almost identical. You know one, you know the other. It's really great. Two, you can build all your features with Gemini and get it working, and then flip it by just changing the provider here, and all of the rest of everything you're doing stays the same. Okay? That's why I'm using Gemini today. All right. So I'm going to pull in a Google Gemini library. I've got my API key. All right, great. That's all I need. The magic of hot reload. I've got my chat right there. And so I can say, hey, who the hell are you? Tell me about yourself. Okay. And it's going to say, I am a large language model trained by Google. It's a little cagey. It doesn't say I'm Gemini. It doesn't say any of that, right? But we know that. We know who we're talking to. Great. Now I'm in the middle of a recipe app. Give me a recipe for chicken parmesan. Well, pick something I can spell. I can spell linguine. Great. Creamy garlic chicken linguine. Fantastic. Look at all the heavy cream. Look at all that dairy. Look at all those carbs. Perfect. Yeah. So the first thing we want to do is we want to allow the user to set some preferences. Hey, here's the foods I like. Here's the foods I don't like. I'm trying to stay low on carbs and cut out the dairy, etc. Right? So imagine, if you will, some settings dialog. I don't have that today. I'm just going to type it into Visual Studio Code. Does that work for everyone? So you pass that via something called the system instruction. Okay? And so we're just going to put in some space. Great. So I want to say, you are a helpful assistant that will create recipes based on user instructions, ingredients, and instructions, helpful, and food preferences. That prompt engineering thing, I can put prompt engineer on my resume, right, because of this. My food preferences are, I don't like mushrooms. No, that's not good enough. I hate mushrooms, tomatoes, and cilantro. I love garlic and onions. And also, I'm a big fan of packages on pub.dev. Okay. I try to avoid dairy. Oh, dairy. Great. And I try to keep my carbs low. Okay, great. Let's do a hot restart. Now, let's try, give me a recipe for mushroom risotto. Stew. Uh-oh. Let's try this again. Please give me a recipe for mushroom. Okay. It's saying, now it's saying, hey, you're looking for mushroom stew. You don't like mushrooms. You want me to suggest something else? Yes, please. Oh, really? See, there was some prompt engineering right there. See? We're all doing it together. Okay, great. So here's a recipe. That's fantastic. I can already see why having a chat in this app is super useful. Hey, I want to generate recipes based on my food preferences, and I want to be able to easily add this recipe to my database. Except, how the hell do I do that? Right? What have I got here? I've got text that I can copy and paste, but I don't have anything useful that I can actually add to my recipes. What I want to be able to do here is get data out that I can parse as a programmer and then have some kind of user interaction that allows me to add it to my database. Agreed? Okay, great. So let's do that. So what I want to be able to do, so I've made the LLM chat view extensible in a couple of ways. One is that something called a response builder. And let me just show the raw text of a response that we're going to get, okay? The idea of a response builder is, right now, any LLM chat response, by default, I'm just going to wrap in Flutter Markdown and show it to you, okay? So I'm going to strip all the way and just show text for now. And then I'm going to go and pull out some instructions that are fairly precise, and I'll show you those. What I'm going to do, and let's try the hate thing. I really dislike. Hopefully that'll solve some problems. Okay. Now, I'm going to ask it to generate a bunch of recipes, and I'm saying whenever you generate a recipe, no matter how I ask or why, generate a JSON object that has a title, description, ingredients, and instructions. Okay? Now, I don't want to take away its, flirty kind of behavior, right? I like that. So you should keep things casual and friendly and feel free to mix rich text and JSON output. So if I do that and say, can I have a, beef stew? And now it's going to say, here's some text. is a recipe for hearty and flavorful beef stew. And guess what? It's doing exactly what I asked. It's giving me the JSON right here embedded. Title, description, ingredients, instructions. Great. And it's mixing things together. Now, that's useful if I go and I parse that. So that that text I will replace something called the recipe response view. Okay? Now I'll show you how this works, and you might not like it, and we'll talk about something else better later. Right? I'm using regular expressions, right? How's it go? Now I have two problems, right? LLMs and regular expressions. But all I'm doing is I'm reaching in, and however many recipes it embeds into its response, what I'm going to do is whenever there's text, I'm going to wrap that in a markdown. And then whenever there's a recipe, I'm actually going to parse the JSON into the exact same data structure I'm already using in my app. And once I have it in that data structure, it's easy for me to say, here's the title, here's the description. Oh, and by the way, here's the view of that recipe in the exact same data structure I'm already using in my app. Okay? So let's see if the magic of Hot Reload is doing its job. It sure is. Right? Our JSON blob has now turned into, well, and we can tell, here's the little, that's the exact same way I'm doing it. Even with the emojis. It's the same code. It's the same widget on both sides. Okay? Great. So that's almost what we want, right? We've now parsed the data into our local kind of data structure. Now what do we want to do? I want to provide the user some kind of gesture that they can use to say, great, take that data, stick it in the database. And I've got a little add button all set up. When they press the add recipe button, I'm going to go to my recipe repository and add that recipe that I've already parsed. Okay? So, notice the magic of Hot Reload, the add recipe button. And this is a stew with cauliflower. Ooh, fancy. And I've got beef and vegetable stew already, but I don't have any hearty beef stew with cauliflower. What happens when I press the add recipe button? There's my new recipe. Okay? So we've now done half of what we want to do, right? Which is, hey, we've integrated the chat into our app in a way that allows us to get data out that's useful to the user of our app. Okay? What's the other way we got to go? We want to go in, right? We want to be able to take recipes and hand those to the LLM. And so what I did, because LLMs are trained on every recipe in the world, right? Just like all the public code and GitHub and all the documentation for all the libraries we use, and that's super useful. So what I wanted was to be able to bring my grandmother's recipes in. Her stuff isn't published on the internet. It barely made it into this book, right? So what we did was we digitized this book and we brought it in the same data format as all the rest of the recipes. So if we look, I've got my grandmother's recipes. So here's her artichoke dip. There's the ingredients, there's the instructions, and then the bit that somebody choked on just a little bit ago is something called an embedding. Okay? Just to be clear what I'm talking about here, what I would like to be able to do is go to the LLM and say, hey, I want to work with one of my grandmother's recipes. You don't know a thing about it. They're in this book, right? They're in the database on my local computer. They have nothing. They're not on the internet. It's very much like every enterprise in the world has all of that private data that isn't published on the internet. Their code, their best practices, They're money, right? We want to be able to go and pull that data in pieces and hand it to the LLM. Why in pieces? Because we only have so much room in the context, right? We can only give the data to the LLM so much volume. I mean, Gemini made waves when it said, hey, we now do 1 million tokens. Oh, now we do 2 million tokens. I could easily pass all of Grandma's recipes in that, right? No problem. But I can't pass all of my enterprise code base. Not even close, right? So what I need to be able to do is be able to look at the user's prompt, figure out what it is they're trying to do, pull the appropriate data, and send it along with the prompt. Anyone know what that's called? RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. Search, tack on that extra data, send it to the LLM, it'll give you a better response. Okay? So, what I want to be able to do is a search. Now, there's any kind of search will do. One of the searches that is useful is something called an embedding. Now, what's an embedding? An embedding allows me to take any old text and get an array of numbers of where that text ends up in space, in an n-dimensional space. So you can think, and what makes it useful is that similar text ends up in similar places in space. So, Grandma's recipes will all end up over here, and recipes as a whole will, be over this way, and, Bill Gates, bank statement, it's way over here, right? Great. This thing is driving me crazy. So, what we want to do is find, when someone says, hey, I want the recipe for my grandmother's apple cake, I want to be able to dig through all of the recipes and find the one that matches the best and send it along to the LLM. How do I do that? Well, another nice property of embeddings is because they're grouped in a similar way, it's easy to do some math to say, hey, are these similar? Right? I can look through all the recipes. Man, this thing is driving me nuts. I can look through all of the recipes, and I can find the one that is the most similar to what the user is asking for and send that along. So I'll do that. And the way we make that work in the LLM chat is with another extensibility point called the message sender. Great. So a message sender here's what a message sender does. This is the method that the chat itself calls. It takes the prompt, and it takes the set of attachments, all the pictures and files, whatever, and it calls this method. And by default, all it does is that. If we do nothing, that's what this will happen, which means that we'll take whatever the user gives us and we'll send it directly to the LLM. Okay? Great. That's not what we want. Oh, except for it's that, as we all know, because it's streaming. Of course, one of the things we know about LLMs is they like to, stream, right? So it's streaming. So what we want to do is say, hey, if the prompt contains something about grandma, grandma. I'll just keep typing until there we go. Great. If the prompt contains something about grandma, I want to augment that prompt with extra data. Okay? So that's easy enough. We'll get ourselves a string buffer. And we know for sure that the buffer will contain the prompt, right? That's the whole point, to send the prompt along. So let's make sure that we don't forget to send buffer.toString. Great. And whatever we end up getting, let's print it out too, so we can take a look. Okay. Now, how do we figure it out? Well, we have this function, helper function called search embeddings. And I'll show you that in a second. But what it's going to yield is, based on this prompt, it's going to go calculate the embedding and then go do that math to go find the recipe in Grandma's database that matches the closest. Once it has that, then we're going to say buffer.write line. This is Grandma's recipe. And we're going to say to string. That's it. That's Cody. That's SourceGraph Cody giving me that cool autocomplete. Yes. Go buy Cody. I'm still a stockholder. Yeah. All right. So what does search embeddings do? Search embeddings loads up that file I showed you with all the Grandma's recipes and the embeddings in it. It reads all the recipes from there and the recipe embeddings. It calls query embedding. It calls back to the provider that knows how to do embeddings. And it calculates the embedding for the prompt, and then it does, this is the magic right there, compute.product. It will take those two embeddings, multiply, add, it give you a number between 0 and 1. The top number, the biggest number, is the closest match. So we're just looking for the biggest number. That's it. That's RAG. That's embeddings. It's not magic. You could keep it in a database. You could do this server side. You could blah, blah, blah. It's easy, right? It's not a big deal. Okay, so how does the provider know how to do get query embeddings? Well, that is the magic, yes. Luckily, we can go right here, and we said, hey, here's the model for chat. Turns out there's another model for embedding, and that model is text embedding 004. And I'll pass in my same API key. Okay? That's how it knows. That's all it needs to be able to calculate embeddings. Because the model knows how to do embeddings, and the provider maps it to the query embeddings. Okay? Now with that in place, we can go back and say, show me Grandma's apple cake recipe. Grandma's apple cake, low carb, dairy free. Because, of course, it took my preferences into account. Okay, but notice I'm doing this using RAG. Let's see what we did. Aha. Grandma's recipe. Here's apple cake. It found it using RAG, using the embeddings, and it sent it, and then it said, oh, and here's my prompt. Right? We gave it the answer and asked for the answer. Right? Great. Okay, now, let me say, hey, can you give me Grandma's original apple cake recipe without modifications due to my food preferences? Yes. Yes, it can. Yep. Flour. Yep. Okay, I'll press the add recipe. Let's see. Let's see what we have in the cake department. No apple cake. Let's press that button. There's Grandma's apple cake. Okay? Now, we did all that, but now we have Grandma's apple cake in the database. It has not been updated according to our food preferences. Okay? Now, wouldn't it be great if I didn't have to chat every time I wanted something done, in a way that, we expect a lot of people to do. For example, if they have a recipe in their database and they update their food preferences, you could imagine, hey, I want to be able to just have this feature, update this recipe based on my food preferences. We want all of the power of generative AI, but we want to make it super simple. Let them press a button. They don't need to chat, right? They don't need to go through all of that ceremony. Let's just make it a feature in our app. So, let's go to the Edit Recipe page, and we'll find the Done button, and we'll clone it. What did I do? Oh, not enough. Great. Okay. Now, I have already built this, and I'll show it to you in a minute, but notice the magic button. You press the magic button, and it says, oh, I'm going to turn Grandma's apple cake into apple crisp. Been modified to remove mushrooms, tomatoes, and cilantro. Thank you. My guess is there weren't a lot of those in the beginning. Replace milk with oat milk and reduce carbs. And has been adjusted to include garlic and onions. Probably not what we had in mind. Okay, but you see how this is. Now, how do we implement the magic button? We created a provider right here. Now, we kept it separate from the chat. We didn't want to pollute the chat. That's the user's communication with the LLM. We created our own. Has its own history, its own config, and that whole, I saw some of you snigger when I was using regular expressions, right? We don't have to do that. We can tell it, hey, I want some JSON. Okay? I just want all of the data to be, human readable or computer readable. And then I set the schema. And here I'm asking for a string that is the set of modifications that you made. Oh, and here's my recipe. And the recipe is not surprising. It's the title, the description, ingredients, and instructions. Okay? So when I do the magic button, what I do is I have a conversation with the LLM just like the user was doing. Okay? I say, generate me a modified version according to my food preferences. Food preferences are passed as a system instruction. Here are the ingredients and the instructions. Do your magic. Okay? And I'll call send message string, which is the exact same function that the chat GTP or the chat window is calling. I can call that too. I don't have to wait. I don't have any attachments, right? Now it's all just JSON. I decode the JSON. I look for the modifications. I look for the recipe. The rest I'll leave to your imagination. Okay? So, we hit the highlights, a couple of other points. All of this we've been showing was all on the cloud. But I have a Llama installed. I've got Gemma installed, which is another local open source. I could do all of the same stuff with Gemma. And I have the prototype of that code working. No time to show it to you right now, but all of that works. I can do it against a local LLM just as easily. And none of the code changes. Okay? Or I could do this mobile. And mobile's really great because I can start doing pictures. Right? I've got this exact same app running on mobile. Let me just do one. Here is a picture of one of the pages of this recipe book. This is how we got the recipes out. Can you get me the recipe from this picture?
And is this Gemma or is this Gemini or the web?
This is Gemini in Android, but you can do the same thing with Gemma on Android. Now we need some more prompt engineering. Render it for me in JSON. Right? So all of the same stuff, you write the app, it all works, right? I mean, I did the cool trick where instead of two things side by side, it's two tabs, right? Because it's a smaller screen, but it's the same code, okay? Now, let's wrap this bad boy up. Demo went pretty well, I thought. We actually made that work. All right. So, some resources for you. The Flutter team themselves has an AI page where they're collecting resources I recommend. Flutter AI Toolkit in its current alpha state. And as I told you, I have some things to push. That's up on GitHub. Feel free to check that out. The Google AI Dart SDK, the Vertex AI for Flutter, Firebase Flutter. Those are the ways I built those providers, right? But you can use them directly. Okay? Now, here's what you should do. You should download the Flutter AI Toolkit, build something cool. And then you should go tell me what you liked and didn't like about it. Go to GitHub, log some issues, feature requests, bugs. That's on the way to a stable release. I need that data so I can make it better. And then, keep doing that, right? In the meantime, if there's something I can do to help you in the areas of applied AI, Dart tools and ecosystems, and of course, Dart and Flutter, feel free to look me up. Thanks very much.